Talking to some of the best names in contemporary Christian music. This is the Hope FM Artist Interview.
If I was to narrow it down to one, I love the story of Joseph because Joseph had big dreams. I feel like I have big dreams. I think we all have big dreams. He was 17 and he saw the future, right? He had this vision of where he's going to be. He's going to be the king, his brothers are going to bow down to him. And I feel like that's a lot like us. We have this vision or this idea, this dream that we feel like God's put in our life. And we actually think it's going to happen tomorrow, just like Joseph did. The crazy thing about Joseph is it went the other way. Instead of becoming like a king, pretty much the next day he was in prison, sold. He was sold by his own family. And I forget the amount of years, it was at least 15 years he spent time constantly felt like he got there and then pushed right back down. And at his darkest hour in the darkest place of his life in prison, God's will came about and then it all happened at once. And I love that story because so many of us, we have this vision for our life and how we think it's going to go. And then it usually goes the other way. And that's when we have to trust that it's actually not our story. It's God's story. And at the end, when Joseph's brothers finally did come to him and bow down, and he was the prince, the king, everything that he saw, he finally saw it at that point. And he said, now I understand. This is all about saving a nation. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about me looking awesome or being the man and having my brothers bow down to me. This was much bigger. And sometimes it takes us years to grow into the plans that God has for us, but we're not going to miss it. It's going to happen because it's his idea. And it's not about us. It's about so many other bigger things, but we get to be a part. So that's why I love Joseph.
Yep, John the Baptist. What a gross dude. But that did not care except for one thing, to prepare the way for the Lord. And I think he got something right. Maybe he should have showered more. But at the end of the day, he was dedicated to his cause, and I admire that from John. And what a great example that there's a lot of secondary things in life, and when you make Jesus the primary thing, let the secondaries be secondary. He took it a little extreme, like showering and eating locusts and things like that. But his primary thing was what he's known for, right? He's known for telling people about Jesus and baptizing them and making disciples. And so, I don't know. I think sometimes we complicate ministry. And for him, it was real simple. It was just prepare the way for the Lord. And I like to think of myself as I want to be like that, maybe smell a little better, but have the amount of focus that John the Baptist did.
I think for me, it's David, always been David. And not just because he was a songwriter, but I think just like, I don't know, just from the beginning, like when you just kind of imagine this boy feeling like at home in the fields and then kind of being called into this kind of place in a role that almost didn't like fit him, and I like, even in the story of David and Goliath, I'm always struck by the part where the king tries to put the armor on him, to go fight Goliath. And then really like, he can't fight that battle in anyone else's armor. Like he has to do it himself, like the way that God made him to walk into that. And I think, I've just always loved that. And truly like, David gets a lot of credit in the Bible, but he was such a flawed character and such a flawed person. But that honesty, kind of that I was saying earlier, like, I think he also just exemplifies that of owning the ways that he has hurt people, the pain he's been responsible for, and he gets to experience all that kind of God has for him in the brokenness of his story. And yes, and he was a songwriter, and so probably just the poet in the field speaks to me.
Totally. And I could say a few people, but I will go with David as well, of just like, I feel like he does give permission. I feel like we both feel like we have big feelings. Like we just are people who feel a lot. Yeah. and kind of can feel really high sometimes and very low sometimes. And I think what's beautiful about David is you see in scripture, like kind of permission to really speak to God like a friend, be incredibly honest and confident and emotional, because I am just emotional sometimes. And so that's really beautiful. And then, yeah, I've actually just been reading through like David's story and just really amazed at, though he had his failings, he had a desire to like follow God's way and like an undivided heart towards like committing to the way of God. Even if he strayed from it, he would always come back. Mm-hmm. And I was just seeing like, because I got past David's story and into like all the split of the kingdoms and all the kings, and God would continue to bless, 6 or 7 generations down, out of honor for his relationship with David, he would bless kings that weren't even still walking with him. So even just the idea that our commitment to following the way of God could like affect generations upon generations because God like commits to someone that strongly, like that was really beautiful to me. So yeah, I would say David as well.
Yeah.
Probably Peter, because I think I get ahead of myself a lot. And I'm thinking like Peter, not Apostle Peter, like early on Peter in his life, like, not like the sanctified, leader of many, the rock Peter. I'm thinking more of like, I'll never deny you. I'll never, the overconfident, the overzealous, but then kind of feebly, I relate to his weakness, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But I also think I relate to the compassion that Christ shows him. And I like to think that I receive that a lot from Jesus. I think that Jesus has made me breakfast many times. And has consoled me many times, and has talked me off the ledge, so to speak, and brought me back into the fold, so I relate to that.
You've been watching The Artist Interview. For the full podcast, click the links below or visit hopefm.com/The Artist Interview.